This meeting is being recorded.
Fancy. All right, guys. So, welcome to the last day of quarantine chats. We have had such a great time, but all good things have to come to an end at some point. And what a way to end our quarantine chats with our special guest. If I had to pick one guest, even though if we play these back, people are going to get angry with me, but if we only had to pick one guest, it would probably be Mr. Painter because he is so entertaining. I follow him on Facebook for the old people and Instagram, and he has some really interesting posts. I've known him for a couple of years. I've heard of him for over a decade, but got to meet him more recently. And Mr. Painter, one of the reasons why we wanted him to come, one, because he's interesting. Two, he's just going to be straight up honest and real with you guys about everything. He's worked at a number of colleges, but he also has 3 children. And make sure I have this right. So you have a high school senior that plays football. You have a college freshman getting ready to be a sophomore that runs track. And you have a college senior that runs track, or he's graduated already?
He's a junior. He had to take a year off. He actually is a swimmer.
Okay, he's a swimmer.
Yes.
All right. So, and on top of that, the fact that he's a dad of 3, he's married, he's been in multiple colleges, college admissions, blah, 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 blah. But he also coaches too. Like, I don't know how he finds time to do all this stuff. So he puts all this stuff on social media. So I thought he would be a great person, well-rounded. They can talk to you guys about the college stuff, the essay stuff, and then what it's like to be a student in COVID, because his students are actually dealing with the COVID stuff. So you guys can ask him COVID-19 college questions too, all right? So before we get started, just remember that all of you guys are muted, but if you have any questions as you go along, you can unmute yourself. And also, if you want to turn your camera off, you can. But if some reason, if your camera is on and you're that person that can't sit still and you keep moving and doing all this stuff and eating, you need to turn your camera off. All right. But other than that, we would like to welcome Mr. Alan Painter from Dickinson College. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Hopefully you are all doing well during this COVID-19 quarantine, and I'm glad to be a part of this quarantine chat. I am very flexible, so if you feel like being on the camera, that'd be wonderful, because obviously I can see your faces, see your smiles. You know, it's kind of like the high school visit or the stage when, you know, I can see you, and if you're nodding your head, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm doing okay. But obviously with this view, I can't tell. But no worries. So a little bit more about myself. As Ms. Mitchell shared, thank you so much. She has been an awesome friend, and glad to be a part of this project. I want to share a little bit about myself again. Yes, I have 3 children. One who goes to Villanova, one who goes to Davidson, and actually my youngest, who is a senior in high school, who will probably pop his head in here. And so if you see me turn and go, it's probably me yelling at him. But he's, as of this afternoon, will be a high school graduate. So he will be, he will be attending Dickinson. So I've got 3 athletes. I know that we are talking about the essay, but feel free to shoot any questions my way at some point. Glad to help out. I am not a Dickinson graduate. I didn't go to Dickinson. I'm not from Pennsylvania. I'm actually from South Jersey. I went to school in West Virginia, and then I transferred to Kutztown University, where I graduated with my bachelor's in elementary education. And then it's funny because as I look back, I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to be a dentist. And when I got to college, I played football. And I was a little nervous about telling everybody about what I wanted to be, because at that time, and and here's to show you how my mind was thinking. I wanted to be able to work in a job where I wore a suit every day. I never knew Black men that wore suits to their job. I didn't live with my father. The only one that I knew was the pastor at church. But other than that, I didn't know any Black teachers. I did have one Black chemistry teacher, but he always wore like a golf shirt like I'm wearing now. So I wanted to wear a suit. The only Black men that I knew that wore suits was the gentleman that I worked for two summers. He was a funeral director. So when I got to college, I said, I'm going to be a funeral director. And my teammates laughed at me. They said, we don't have that program here. And I said, oh. So I guess I had to change my plans. I kind of floated around, and I chose elementary education because I love kids. And, it just worked out wonderful for me. I taught for 2 years in Reading, PA. And then I stumbled on college admissions. And that was when I began to think, like, wow, I didn't know that this was a job. I didn't know that people did this, read applications, awarded. I thought it just happened because I played football. I just kind of stumbled on it. So it was kind of interesting that I actually do this job. Now I get to share that with other folks, and have been doing so for the last going on 20 years now. I start my 20th year this summer.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I never thought I'd be in it. They always say you'll be in college for 3 or 30 years. I guess I'm on the 30-year plan at this point. So we are going to talk about first, let me take a moment. I just want to share a little bit with you about Dickinson. And it'll just be a few slides that I'll kind of go through. Hopefully you can see this. And this is, so real quick, I'll breeze through these. Dickinson College is a small liberal arts college. We're located in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. It's about 2 hours west of Philadelphia. We have just under 2,400 students. Average class size is about 15 students. Student faculty ratio is 9-to-1. We have 45 majors. Big majors, I won't say best majors, are international business management, international studies, political science. We have 13 languages. We also have environmental science and environmental studies, all smaller programs. Archaeology as well has a great draw, small program, but people come from all over. Our students represent almost all 50 states and more than 40 different countries. And 80% of our students are from out of states, are from out of state. Dickinson does not offer criminal justice. We can talk about a little bit more about that because you might be looking at getting into certain fields that really might not require criminal justice, but might definitely require something that we have. We are the 16th oldest college in the United States, chartered in 1783, just 6 days after the signing of the Treaty of Paris by Dr. Benjamin Rush, who's a co-signer on the Declaration of Independence, as well as a physician in the Philadelphia area who felt that every student should have a global experience. A global experience, whether it would be languages. At the time, Greek and Latin were very common languages that were taught here in the United States. Certainly you can say one of 13 languages: Spanish, German, French, Portuguese, Russian, Italian, Hebrew, Mandarin, Arabic. We do require 3 semesters of a foreign language while with us. At Dickinson, you will hear global, international, sustainable quite a bit. One of the big things that Dickinson has become very well known for has been the study abroad program. Roughly about 65% of our students study abroad. You can stay abroad for a semester, for a year, 2 locations. We are consistently among top 10 schools in the United States for the amount of students who study abroad for a full year. And what you're seeing here, though we do have more than 30 partner programs in 24 countries. Dickinson has become most well known because we have 18 Dickinson global programs, meaning when you travel to a Dickinson site, you are taking Dickinson coursework. Our faculty chair those sites, and you're not transferring back anyone's courses. They are Dickinson classes. We've been in Bologna, Italy for over 50 years now. That's our longest running site. But as you can see, we're in South America. We just added a location in Brazil. We're in New Zealand, 2 locations in China. So all over the planet. And as you can see, some of our students on some of those trips. Sustainability has also been a big one. Very green school. Dickinson has been #1 in sustainability as of 2018. Last year we were #2, so I just kept the #1 on there. And Dickinson has lots of opportunity for students who are looking into environmental programs. Very green in terms of buildings. 6 LEED platinum, 6 LEED gold certified buildings, 1 LEED platinum certified dorm. We have our solar panel field, and Dickinson also has our own farm, which is about 7 miles away. Total organic farm, opportunity for students to research, volunteer. A good bit of our produce in our dining hall comes from our farm. It's about 180 acres, of which we run about 80 acres of the farm. What you're seeing here is Dickinson has also been committed to going carbon neutral in 2020, and we did that this year. First college in the in the state of PA to go carbon neutral. So trying to make sure we continue to lead the way in those areas. Our Center for Advising, Internships, and Lifelong Career Development, those are the folks that are guiding you from the time you started Dickinson to the time you graduate and even beyond that. We are working with you in terms of internships, jobs, graduate school. 95% of our students have been placed within a year of graduating from Dickinson. And again, it's through the great work of the folks from the Center for Advising, Internships, and Lifelong Career Development. Even in terms of careers, the liberal arts experience has been such an awesome opportunity for students to pursue careers that you might not think are those. Like for example, I'm trying to think who was that's asked about Matthew asked about criminal justice. Let's use criminal justice for an example. Matthew, what do you want to do with the criminal justice? Is Matthew still here?
Looks like he kind of disappeared. Sometimes he pops off. He'll pop back in.
Okay. So let's use.
I know Matthew. Matthew, he's a volunteer firefighter, and he does all the civic stuff.
Okay.
With the firefighters and volunteering this and volunteering that. So he's a 9th grader, and he's heavily involved in the community doing stuff like that.
Cool. So I'll use the example of criminal justice. I have a friend actually who is a chief of police, and he always, in his hiring, always runs up against someone who might have a criminal justice background, and that's more so juvenile probation's work and things like that. But someone who's looking to get into law enforcement, maybe FBI work, one of the think about what those people are doing for a living. And if you're looking at getting into the FBI, I can't, even the state police, I've heard from several folks in those areas, accounting, econ, psychology, all those tend to be better fits for their work. And I often say, think about the work that you're doing. So while a liberal arts education will prepare you broadly, again, think about the internships and the opportunities to get you to where you're going to go. This talks about where our graduates have gone. Obviously, graduation, this is the wonderful scene that normally happens, but we're not seeing that this year. We will see something, but not sure what. 120 plus clubs and organizations. service, cultural, music, theater, dance. Our sports teams compete NCAA Division III. Loving this field here because next year I'll get to either stand in the bleachers or stand on the sideline watching my own son play down there at Biddle Field. Of course, some other things that our students are doing. And there is my contact information. I know I am not the regional counselor for Montgomery County. Molly Bogle, who is in our office, is. But obviously, if you want my information, here's my information. Feel free to reach out to any of us in our office. We are all here to assist you in this process. So I say all that because we are talking about the college essay. And there's a couple different essay opportunities that you will experience. You'll experience, obviously, the Common App essay, because we are a Common App school. Some schools don't use the Common App, but we do. So there's an essay that might be there. And I think this year there will be an additional essay with the Common App that will be geared towards COVID-19. I'm actually going to be, after this session, doing another session, and then going to be sitting in the Common App Summit as I understand more of their changes that are going to be coming around.
And if I can interject, we wanted Mr. Painter so bad that we changed the time of quarantine chats to make sure that he could be here today, because y'all know we usually meet at 1. So y'all knew there had to be a reason that it got changed.
Thank you. So the essay, so you have the Common App essay, but then you'll also have a supplement. A supplemental essay, for the most part, is likely going to be significant to that particular school. We used to have a supplement. Our supplement changed over and over through the years. We no longer have the supplement. But notice I went through a Dickinson presentation first. That was intentional, not because I want to recruit you all, but, well, I do want to recruit you all. But because you should know something about the institution that you're applying to. The essay, for us, and I can speak for probably a lot of liberal arts colleges, it's going to vary with larger schools. We take a holistic view of your application. Your application involves your application, your fee or fee waiver, your transcript, the rigor of your curriculum, your activities that you've done outside of the classroom, which we can certainly talk about, your testing if you are submitting them, though Dickinson is a test optional school. As you can imagine, a lot of schools are going to be test optional this year and next year and probably the next 3 years. But Dickinson has been test optional since 1995. We're one of those early schools that has always felt that the scores have never been the most accurate showing of student success. And we've done well with that. There is no proof at Dickinson that a student with higher test scores performs any better than a student with lower test scores or no test scores. In fact, sometimes it's the opposite. And as a matter of fact, I know a young lady. Funny thing is, so I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never seen anyone with worse test scores than me. So, knock on wood, I hope I never do. But I got to tell you, I'm just not the person in that place to say that your test scores make you. My mom says I turned out great, so I'm like, cool. So I'm not going to judge anyone based on their test scores. But know this, if you submit them, we are obligated to use them. So if you submit a 600, which I hope none of you ever get a 600 on the entire SAT, we've got to use that. And in some ways that can hurt you. Probably in many ways that can hurt you. But when you have a test optional policy, you have the option of not using it. You have to let us know. Various schools do give you the opportunity to submit something else. We don't do that at Dickinson. Just if you're not going to use them, you're not going to use them. You just have to tell us. Otherwise, we will assume that they're coming. let me see, the essay to the Common App for us, and then again for other schools might not. So know that we're looking at all of these pieces. You want to, spell your name obviously correctly. If you did spell your name incorrectly, don't call us up and tell us, I want to resubmit because I spelled my name wrong. That's probably not cool. That you spelled your name wrong. But if you are choosing to write about the school, like for example, we're Dickinson College, not Dickinson with an E, not Dickerson, not Dixon, not Davidson or Denison or Fairleigh Dickinson or Dickinson State or Duquesne or Drew. So know that when you choose to insert the school's name, you want to make sure you're talking about the right school, Dickinson College, not Dickinson University. These things are very important when you're writing your essay. So if you choose to insert the school name, make sure you're doing that. Also make sure you are, I'll never forget a student wrote their essay. They talked about the science building and he said, and that's why Syracuse is my number one choice. And I went, oh. The cut and paste job is probably not the best thing for you. I also had a student who wrote in their essay, I went to the college fair where I was on the quarantine chat with Alan Painter, and he was so wonderful. And while I'm happy to see all that, remember all of our travel, all of our appointments are all logged too. I'll never forget reading an application of a student who had me going. I was like, wow, she is into me. Boy, this is cool because it's nice to be buttered up. But the problem is, Alan wasn't at the college fair she was at. I know I wasn't there. I'm the regional counselor. It was a volunteer who had my cards and gave them. So make sure that if you are going to do these little personalization pieces in your essay or somewhere in your application, make sure you are accurate. And it's really, and I don't say this to scare you. I say this just to kind of watch over those things. I'm not a big person on spell checking and grammar, but know this: I'm not every person that reads an application either. They're not all education majors. They might be history majors. They might be English majors. They might be early 20s, fresh out of college. They might be 10 years in. They might be 30, 40 years in. You never know who is on the other end reading your application. Know that your application is also being read by multiple people as well. So in our office, it'll probably be seen 3 times at minimum. And when I say 3 times, I'm like 3 different people. If I'm your regional counselor, I'm probably going to see it myself twice, at the beginning and then right at the end. If it goes to committee, because I'm checking everything just to make sure. I don't want you getting a wrong letter at the end. And I want to make sure that if you got merit, I want to make sure you have the right. So I've got to look at it again. So know that multiple people are going to look at it, and they're all going to have different views on your application. So that's the reason why I say, if nothing else, check your spelling, check your grammar for those reasons, because someone might be really into for those things. Let me see, what else? Topics. Most Common App essays will have some kind of subject line for you to go with. I say have fun with the essay. This need not be rocket science. Oddly enough, sometimes when you're being guided by folks on writing the essay, they tend to be looking for more in your essays than actually college admissions folks are. You're probably doing it, like I think for my son's class, school, it was the English class. They had them write essays. and he had me look at his essay. Normally, I really wouldn't look at essays, but his essay, because I knew he was in the process. I said, looks great. And the teacher still graded it low. And he's like, but this was looked at by a college admissions person. And you gave me a low grade. So sometimes the teacher might be a little harder on your essay than we are. But have fun with it. If you are choosing to stand out in any way, great. It's your essay. I just say this: if you're going to mention things in your essay, in your activities, make sure that you're ready to talk about them, because something that could pop up would be the interview. The interview is also a key part of the college admissions process for some schools. And who knows, if your essay is in, we might talk about that. But there really isn't much to it. I don't want to sit here and make you guys feel like there is this big rocket science of what's a great essay. It's your essay. It's your experience. So if you had a moment where you were learning to ride a bike and it took you a couple of years, and you talked it out through your essay, it was your experience. Who am I to say that it's not the right experience? Sometimes students choose to write about a hard time in their life. I get it. And I don't want to sound like I'm belittling someone or anything like that, but know that sometimes when you write those essays, know that you're not the only one. Like for example, I've had students write about coming to Dickinson, and I'll say Philly for example, and they say, well, I want to go to Dickinson because there's no diversity out there. No one goes to Carlisle. Not really. I've got more students in Harlem, New York than I have from Philadelphia. I probably have more students from Los Angeles than I have from I've got more Los Angeles students. So know that when you choose to write about those things, you probably should have a lot more background information, when writing those things. This is open. I wanted to make sure I got through within those first 20, 30 minutes, so that I left time for questions for all of you on Dickinson, on whatever. I'm here. Like Ms. Mitchell said, I'm a straight shooter, so I won't hold back.
Yeah, so just make sure, guys, this is the last day of the chats, and you have someone who's been at a lot of different schools, and so you can ask him about the essays, the letters, but he can also speak on other topics. We did have other speakers that did like college fit, SAT, blah, 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 but there's some people who may not have been on those. So, and then also, if you came on a little bit later, if you are a student athlete, Mr. Painter has 3 children who are all student athletes, and he is also a coach. So he is very knowledgeable about NCAA stuff too. So definitely ask him your questions. So let's go. You can unmute yourself, ask your question, or you can put them in the chat. I have some, but I'm saving the time for y'all. Really, y'all? This has been like the last 2 weeks, quiet storm, and then like the last 30 seconds, blah, 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 blah.
Don't be shy.
So I'm going to start asking my questions, and then when everybody's brain starts to roll, and you guys, once I see that you're putting some stuff in the chat, I'll stop asking questions. What are your suggestions about letters of recommendations and how students should obtain them? Like, how should they choose the teachers that write those letters?
Good question. So letters of recommendation, as you can, I don't know if you guys can hear this, my dog is trying to push his way in the room. I'm like, get out. So letters of recommendation. So I say that your letters of recommendation should be obviously you want to have that academic letter of recommendation. For us, we require the counselor recommendation. That's important, as well as your one, but we like to see 2 teacher evaluations. They should be someone who can speak to your, not just your character, but maybe your work. So sometimes, sometimes someone wants to choose like a teacher in the senior year, which is fine, but hopefully that's someone, especially if you're applying early, our first deadline is November 15th. How much does that person really know you? So you definitely want someone who knows you well, and can speak to your work ethic. Sometimes we get angry at our guidance counselors and things like that, but I'm going to just be blunt. Now's not the time to have a bad relationship with your counselor, because your counselor is our colleague, and if a counselor shares something about you that, student is hard to work with, but great student, that's going to stick in some ways, and likewise, maybe you've left some things out in your application, whether it's your essay, your activities. Your counselor is absolutely going to be looking out for you. And I had a student a few years, well, more than a few years back, probably like 2012, 2013, who helped raise something like 70 grand for an orphanage being built in Tanzania. Never once did she mention that in her application, not in the activities, not in her essay. I interviewed her once, and she did not. It was the counselor who reached out to me and asked me if I would interview her again. And when I did, because she kind of forced me to, there are some counselors that have that kind of clout with me. Miss Mitchell's one of them who all up and say, "Hey, Alan, come on, could you do that?" and I'd say, "Okay, all right," because we only do one interview. But I did, and she sent me an article, and that was where I read about this young lady. I was like, wow, this girl never mentioned it once. So I was able to pull that out. So know that your counselors and your teachers are people who are going to absolutely highlight those aspects of you that maybe you forgot to talk about, or maybe you didn't want to. Like this girl, she didn't want to brag. That's what she said. She said that's just what we do. She said that our family is very active in service, and that's what we do. I didn't think I should brag about that. I was like, girl, absolutely, brag away.
I have another question, and it's pretty much for me. The students don't really need to worry about this too much. What happens if you get a letter from a counselor or a teacher that's not a bad letter? It's a lazy letter. Like it's 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs of, you can tell it's a cut and paste and it just had to send it. Does that hurt a student?
I don't think it hurts a student. I don't think it helps a student, though. And there's one school, I won't say the school's name. I've visited this high school for almost 20 years, off and on. Every letter of recommendation, the first paragraph talks about the school, the Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, first off, that was 2003 that you got the Blue Ribbon School of Excellence thing. And you're still writing as your first paragraph. And leaves so little about the student. And I try to remind, some counselors and teachers, if possible, I get it. I know you've got a huge caseload, but I also had to remind them, but you had to know these students over the course of 4 years. I have 4 months, and I have to read 6,000. So I've got to read these applications. I've got to advocate for your students. Could you help me out here with a little bit? Um, um, I don't think it hurts some, but again, it just doesn't help. I think I've had some, you know, some have just been blunt. I don't know, student. You know, that's good. I mean, cool. But you know, I have to remind them that this application is about the student. But believe it or not, I've even seen some letters of recommendation that absolutely talked about the counselor and their credentials for the entire essay, the entire recommendation. I have been doing this for such and such, and when I got my master's at University of such and such, I've run into students like this, and in my research, I'm like, wait, whoa, this is about the student.
Wow. All right. Thank you for that. Now we have some questions. Here we go. Come on, y'all. So the question says, for the activities portion, what would be certain things that you can include? So is it the activities portion of the application? Yeah, so for the activities portion of the application, what would be certain things that a student can include or should include?
Anything and everything. Now, that said, there is some research. I haven't dug deep into that research yet. There is research that shows that if you've got, because I know some of you worry about, well, I don't have as much activity as this other person. But remember that if you are involved in so much that your grades are suffering, like there is a correlation between it. So if you're doing it, so if some students are putting all those things in there to seem impressive, in some ways it's not as impressive as one would think, because there's just so much, and you're like, okay, when does school happen? But anything, I mean, I've had students who work and don't have time for sports. I've even seen students who worked and they, you know, like the one young lady, she supported her mom because mom can't work. And then she got up every morning, you know, she came home, she got up, she got showered, and she was late to school every day because she just came home from working overnight, and then showering and trying to get a little bit of sleep before getting to school. Mm. That's impressive to me. You know, this is a young lady who shouldn't have to do all that, but had to because she had to support the family. I've had students who are involved in church, students who, you know, are in sports. I get it. I'm a father of 3 athletes. My wife and I were athletes. I get it. You know, if you're involved in sports, and you know, there's a lot of time that goes into that. You know, my son swam 11 months out of the year and then ran track. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. And when I'm talking swimming, you know, you're talking early morning, 5 o'clock, and then working out later on in the day, you know, so, and that's constant. So know that we know what kind of things going on. So that's you.
That was a great question, Kaylin. Thank you for the response, Mr. Painter.
Someone asked about Hershey CC. Yeah, yes, Hershey. I live in Hershey.
How did she see all of that? What did she see?
It's got the H and the Hershey kiss on it, and I played it a million times.
Yeah. Yeah, I live in Hershey. I'm not a member of the Hershey Country Club, but it was I had a gift when I did an event there, so I said I'll take it.
Is your senior at Hershey High with Jeff Smith?
Oh, that's right, Jeff.
He's our old principal.
Yes. So our older 2 were at Hershey. My youngest son was at Hershey until last March, and he's graduating from Bishop McDevitt.
Okay.
We had a furnace fire last year and had to move, and we didn't want his schooling to be interrupted, so we were living in a different town, which would have meant, all right, do I enroll him in that school, or do we go to the Catholic school and give him at least close to the Hershey experience? And that's what we opted for.
I'm from Lebanon, Pennsylvania, so that's also why I know.
Ah.
Okay, we have a question. You were out for the last 15 minutes, so what are the most important things you said? We'll just have you watch the replay, Johnny, because it was a lot of important stuff that was said. But since you're on here, Johnny, I'm sure you have some athletic questions, because again, Mr. Painter's a coach and he has 3 student athletes. And so I know on every one of these, you ask about the subject of education. So probably want to answer that question for him as far as your education major, any grad school stuff, and then what sport do you play, Johnny? Okay, he'll come back on. And when he goes in, okay, he does tennis and swimming.
Okay.
And he wants to major in education, and he's in 10th grade.
Okay.
And at the top of the class, if I can say that. In the top 10 of the sophomore class.
Okay. Well, the first thing, as far as major and as far as your search, not that, well, one is understanding, knowing if you want elementary ed or if you want to be a high school or middle school teacher, because obviously the education programs are going to be very different. And elementary ed program is pretty much, K through, I think Pennsylvania is now back to K through 5, K through 6. When I went through it was K8, kind of went back and forth. And then in high school, obviously you have to choose a subject area and then you get certified in secondary education. So it might be history and then you get secondary certification. So figuring that part out first. And then of course, looking at the schools that have the programs that suit you. But as an athlete, whether you're trying to be recruited or whether you want to compete, obviously knowing that you got Division 1, 2, and 3, NAIA as well. We recruit at all levels. I'm actually the athletic liaison for Dickinson, and I get this all the time where I have students who had this mindset of Division 3, like, oh well, I don't want to play at a competitive level, so I'm going to go to Division 3. I'm like, sorry, our men's lacrosse team is a top 10 program in the country, and they are recruiting. And at this, it's June. It's almost June. By mid next month, our men's lacrosse recruiting class will be done. Like, so if someone came to me in October, it's unlikely that they'll get recruited because we're already done. And it varies from sport to sport. So there's still a recruiting process. There's still a high level of competition. If you're looking at swimming, wow, Division 3, you've got Kenyon, you've got Dickinson, you've got Emory, are all D3 schools that are in the top 5 nationally that could compete with any big D1 program. In fact, Kenyon always has transfers to University of Michigan. So, Kenyon won, I don't know, something like 33 out of the last almost 40 national championships. Just a fantastic program. So find those schools that are right fit for you. With swimming and track, it's all about time and things like that. First step, are you that right fit? Even with football, I just had a young man this year who was a 1,000-yard running back who just thought that all these colleges should have been after him. I'm like, dude, it's the middle of May and you still have no school. Yeah, but I'm a 1,000-yard. I'm like, let's just do the math on how many 1,000-yard running backs are in the country. And I'm like, kids with 3 and 4,000 yards. Your 1,000 is not saying a whole lot. And if I can be honest, you're 140 pounds, wet and wearing boots. We've got to find the right fit school for you. And I'm like, it's not. I'm like, people aren't just out there drooling. I'm like, if they knew about you, they would have picked you up last October. So we should not be doing this in May. So find the right fit. Find what the schools need. So lots of things there.
The next question is, do you guys offer business classes or business major?
Dickinson has an international business management program. Again, remember I talked about international, global, sustainable. So our program, the International Business Management Program, is the largest of our majors. I wouldn't say best because I'd be in trouble with all the other professors, but it's certainly a big program, and it will have that global focus to it.
Question, and we don't have any seniors on here, but we do have maybe 1 or 2 juniors here. And I know we don't have a lot of answers about schools opening and doing online stuff with COVID and things of that nature, but I may have some older seniors that may watch this video later. What is your advice and your stance? There are some students that are afraid of, going to a school that's far from their house, and maybe they're thinking about doing community college, or they're thinking about doing a gap year. What are some of the advice that you guys have been giving students on that? Because I want to make sure that students aren't panicking and making a decision that, might not be necessary or best under the circumstances.
Wow.
I know that's a loaded question.
Yeah, it's because, because on one end, we certainly want to, obviously I'm not the person that makes the final decision. That comes from the senior staff, whether it's president and trustees and everyone who's meeting on a regular. I'd say we should probably all have answers by mid-June. As far as Pennsylvania, most PA schools are pretty much on the governor's plan. If we are not in the green, we're probably not going to be a go. Know that we want to have school. We want to have students on campus with us because that's who we are as an institution. We are liberal arts institutions, and a lot happens with the relationships of just this one-on-one and professors and classmates. But we want to be safe as well. So,
and I guess what I'm asking, not so much as like a got you question, but you keep hearing all these students talking about they want to take a gap year and go the next year, as a precaution. And I have my mixed feelings about taking gap years anyway, because, to me, they really need to be something that's really structured. If you're not doing structure, you're not going away, you're not taking a gap year, you just didn't go to school.
I think people saw Malia Obama do the gap year thing and they were like, ooh, gap year. I'm like, but they don't realize that there was something going on there. There was something structured. People have been doing gap year programs for years, decades. They've been doing PG years, and things like that. But, are you going to take that year and do something structured? If so, you really should have that plan in place now. Because if you've already been admitted, then you've got to let the school know. Because at this point, we're starting to pair you up with advisors. We're starting to put you, if you're going to be on campus for at least part of the fall in dorms, we might do a 50-50 on campus and some virtual, but we have to get those classes ready. And those things take time. And so for us, we need at least June and July to be able to start pairing you up with advisors and getting your classes set and all those things. So it definitely should be some kind of structure, just not gap year, just be doing a gap year. community college is an option, but know that, you know, if schools are doing virtual, you know, for even partial virtual, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, people say, I don't want to pay the tuition if I'm going to school virtually. I'm like, you're still being taught by the faculty members on that campus. You know, the only thing that's changing is you're not living on campus, which means you're probably not paying room and board because they're not feeding you. And you're probably not doing all those other activities, but you're still going to school. So I don't see a horrible thing with that. I just don't think that, personally, I don't think that's what's going to be the reality.
Yeah, that was a good answer. And I was on a conference last night, and also one of the other college reps on that event were saying that also, if you guys are considering doing a community college, you also need to keep in mind that, especially if you're an upperclassman, a junior or a senior, the community college most likely won't even have the classes that you need to take at the higher level. And even if they do have the class, you know, it doesn't mean that it's going to transfer back to the school that you're going to. So, you know, you guys need to do some research if that's something that you're thinking about. And I mean, this is kind of like the 12th hour to try to figure out how those classes are going to transfer back and forth. But, you know, it's no point in, you know, doing community college to save the money or save the time if they don't have the class that you need to graduate.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it's, if you're freshman, sophomore year, yeah, you definitely got some classes at community. Senior year, likely not.
All right, guys, so we have 1 more minute because we are coming up on the 12:30 hour, and our VIP member has other things that he has to do, and we do too. So we'll take one last question. For our Quarantine Chats 2020. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Well, all right. If you guys can do Mr. Alan Painter, if you can give him some Norristown love and either unmute yourself and give your salutations, if you can put something in the comments, if you can do the little hand clap thing, I didn't know that was on there. Give them some love. And if everyone on here can put in the chat or unmute yourself and let Mr. Painter know one thing that you either learned today or he gave you more clarity on. So very quickly, one thing you learned today or one thing that you received more clarity on. So I need an answer from everybody. What did you learn today? Okay, so again in the chat, guys, you're saying something that you learned today or something that you got more clarity on. All right, that your school is the 16th oldest school, okay? And you guys definitely, whenever we start visiting again, you got to go visit this school. It's a very unique looking school. What to put on essays. I learned that the college paper needs to be more accurate. Yep. We should have like 3 more comments in here. Something that you learned today, okay, about college admission. 1, 2 more, 1, 2 more. Okay, everybody else is shy. So on behalf of Norristown Area High School, thank you so much, Mr. Painter, for coming. Okay, one more thing. One thing I learned today is that the school has 45 majors. Okay. People are listening, writing notes. So on behalf of Norristown Area High School, we would like to thank you for spending time with us on our last day of quarantine chats. And we don't take it lightly that you took time out of your schedule and rearrange your schedule so that you can be with us. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy, everyone.
And guys, just remember before you go, those of you who are on here at least once, I have a class that I'm teaching in a couple of weeks that's going to break down all the topics that we talked about in more detail. You guys know I do stuff on the side. There will be tickets that I will be selling, but I will give you guys all free tickets to my class so that you can get some more development over the summer. And my students that have been to the majority of this class will get some kind of gift card from me in the mail. So I'm going to email you guys and get your addresses. So thank you guys so much for making Quarantine Chats a great success. It really makes me feel good that you guys took time out of your schedule, because y'all could be doing everything else like playing Fortnite and stuff like that. But you chose to come to these classes on a regular basis. I really appreciate that we weren't sitting in here talking to each other, just me and the guests. All right. So thank you guys so much. What'd you say?
I said, thank you, Miss Mitchell.
You're welcome. I'll try to put together some kind of survey to send you guys. So if I don't talk to you before school ends, you guys have a great summer. Okay, thank you so much. Try to make the best of your summer. Be careful in what you do, and just remember that the governor, still has some kind of restrictions with, how you're going to meet with people and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that we still keep that curve flat. All right. But you guys, whatever you do, be safe and make sure you wash those hands. All right. So love you guys.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell.